Today we're going to add a basic order system where the player can order her group to hold position, fall in or move to a given position. Our implementation will be quick and basic. We just want to get a result as fast as possible, and later on we will refine the system, add more polish and handle more orders. First, let's work on the UI to make it easy for the player to create their group. Let's start by working on the pause menu. Right now in the pause menu, we suppose that the player's group is already created. So we have buttons to change the formation, and we have buttons to spawn a new NPC in the player's group and change the rank of the player. What we're going to do now is create a panel that will have all of these buttons, and we will hide them if the player doesn't have a group, and instead we'll display a create group button. That way, even if the player doesn't have a group, we can create it from this interface. Okay, first let's go to our hierarchy. So I have my group manager here. I'm going to put it in the game manager's object. Let's also put the noise system here. Okay, let's go to the UI manager. Under the canvas, we have our pause menu. I'm going to switch to my second scene view where I've set it to 2D, and I'm going to zoom out. So this is our pause menu. So we have a panel for the formations and we have a panel for group controls. Let's right click on pause menu and create a new empty. I'm going to call it player group controls. I'm going to click on the anchor and press Alt and then click here to make this panel stretch over the screen. I'm going to put the formations panel and the buttons panel under the player group controls. That way we can toggle this on and off if we have a group. Now let's organize this a little bit. The formations panel uses a vertical layout group. I'm going to remove it. I'd much rather use a grid. So I'm going to choose a grid layout group. And here we can define the size of each button. Let's keep it at 100, which is fine. So for the spacing, let's give it some spacing like 10 pixels or maybe 20 pixels. Then let's put the formations object under the buttons panel. Okay, let's resize it a little bit. Perhaps a size of 100 is too much. Let's set it to 64 and let's make the panel bigger. Let's put the formations panel at the bottom. So I'm going to go into the anchor here. I'm going to press Alt and choose this one so that the panel stretches relative to the bottom, and I'm going to put it like this. We can also choose a padding. Let's choose a left padding of 30 and the right padding of 30 as well. And let's set child alignment to middle center or perhaps upper center. Okay. Now I'm going to move these buttons. So here we have the spawn NPC button and the rank up and rank down buttons. Okay, this will do. Now I'm going to duplicate this buttons panel and rename it to creation panel, and I'm going to hide the buttons panel. And in the creations panel, I'm going to remove everything except one button. I'm going to have it at the center, so I'm going to press Alt and click here to put this button in the center, and I'm going to rename it to create group button and set the text to create group. Let's resize it a little bit. So I'm holding Alt and dragging at the edges here using the rect tool. So now if we don't have a group, we will have this button to create one. We can have all these methods in the UI manager, but let's create a dedicated class for this. Let's go to scripts, UI, and let's create a new script called player group control UI. Okay, let's open the script. Here I'm going to have two references, one to our creation panel and one to our controls panel. Let's define a method, create player group. We'll need a reference to the player object. So let's create a property that will serve as a shortcut for uimanager.instance.player. So we're going to check if the player is null or if the player already has a group. So we can access the NPC reference on the player controller using the character property. So if player.character.group is not null, we're going to return. And now we need to create a group. We currently don't have a reference to the group manager. So let's go into the group manager script. Let's go to scripts, groups and formations, then group manager. Let's make this a singleton. So let's create a public static property instance, which we can get but only set privately. And we're going to create an awake method where we set the instance to this object. Okay, back to our player group control UI. Now we can call the create group method on our group manager, which will create a new group. Then we can use the add member method to add the player's character to the group. Let's create an update method where we're going to check if the player has a group or not. If the player doesn't have a group, we'll activate the creation panel and deactivate the controls panel. And we'll do the opposite if the player has a group. Okay, let's go back to the editor. In our player group controls panel, I'm going to add our new script here. So I'm going to hook up the creation panel and the controls panel. And on the creation panel, we have the create button. And I'm going to have the on-click event on this create group button set to our player group control and specifically to the create player group method that we just created. Okay, let's do a test. Okay, so we have the player. We don't have a group. I'm going to click on create group. As soon as we do this, the panel has changed. And here we have an 11th group. So if I click on it, then you can see that this panel has the NPC, which is the player's character. Okay, so let's spawn a new NPC. So when I click on spawn NPC, it spawns a new robot Kyle, which apparently is using some old behavior tree to move around. And this robot Kyle doesn't seem to have the proper behavior tree to follow the leader, so it will just wander around aimlessly. Okay, let's fix this. And apparently in the console, we have some errors in the NPC look script because the old Space Robot Kyle doesn't have the rigs that we added recently. So this is completely normal. We need to change the prefab that is used here. So let's track down what happens. So on the UI manager, we have a member prefab, which is set to guard. So this is Space Robot Kyle. Instead, we're going to set it to our Sentry NPC. Let's do it again. Create group, spawn NPC. Okay, so we have a problem is that the created group doesn't have a formation. So we're going to fix that. Let's go to the group manager script. So here I'm going to add a default formation and let's go to the create group method. So whenever we create a group, we're going to set its formation to the default formation. Okay, so in the group manager object, let's set the default formation. I'm going to set it to convoy. Okay, now it works. So I've spawned a few NPCs that follow the player's character. I'm going to change the formation. Let's set it to circle and let's add more NPCs. Let's change the formation to line. Okay, so this seems to be working. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my faction to red faction, and you can see that even my group members are shooting at me. So we're going to change this behavior and make it possible for all the followers of the group to have the same faction as the leader. So let's go to our group script. Here we have an update method where we remove the dead members. Now we're going to loop through the members and ensure that each follower has the same faction as the leader. First, we're going to get the leader and we're going to get the faction of the leader, and we're going to loop through the members and set the faction for each member to the leader faction. That way, when we change the faction as the group leader, all followers will also change their faction. So I'm just going to add some spacing between these formation buttons. I think they're too close to each other. So let's go to the buttons panel and to the formations and let's increase the spacing. Yeah, something like 40 looks much better. Okay, now we have a group and I'm going to change my faction to the red faction, and now all the members of the group are also members of the red faction. All right, now let's implement an order system. Let's go to the NPC folder and right click and create a new folder. Let's call it orders. Let's create a new script called order. So we don't need our order to be a mono behavior, but we'll add the serializable attribute so we can see the order in the inspector. Let's add a public enum order type with values set to none, hold, and move. So by default, an order will have the none type. So if an NPC is part of a group, it just means that the NPC has to follow the group. If the order is set to hold, then the NPC will have to stand in a target position. And if the order is moved, then the NPC has to move to a target position. So in the order class, let's add an order type. Let's have it as a private member and let's serialize the field. Then let's add a type property so we can access the type from outside. Let's add a method called cancel. So this will cancel the order, setting its type to none. Then let's add a hold position method, which will have a target position as parameter. So this will set the type to hold, and we need a target position. So let's define a private vector tree target position. And in the hold position method, we're going to set the target position to the target position in the parameter. We're going to do the same thing for the move order. So when we have a move, I'm just going to copy this code, and we're going to set the type to move. And we're going to set the target position. Let's go to our NPC script. So the inspector of our NPC is a little bit messy. So let's add some headers to this. I'm going to move the group down below. Let's add a header for the group and orders, and let's have our order here. Let's add a header for the components, which will have the sensor and I guess also the gun. Okay, so the inspector of our NPC component is still a bit of a mess, but it doesn't really matter. So we have the order here. So as you can see, this is a fold out with our type set to none by default, and we also have the target position here. Okay, let's go to our input actions in project settings. I'm going to add a new action here. Let's call it order hold. It will be of type button, and I'm going to set the binding to the F1 key. So let's go to the keyboard, and I'm going to click on by location of key on the US layout. Then I'm going to scroll all the way down to find F1. So when we press F1, we want to toggle between the hold order and the follow order for all the followers of the player. Okay, so let's go into the player controller script. Okay, so this is the player controller. I'm going to scroll down to the input callbacks region. Let's add a new method. So we have an input value as parameter, and this will allow the player input script of the input system to call this method every time the order hold action is triggered. So we're going to check if input is pressed. Let's also check if NPC group is not null and NPC is the group leader. If our player character doesn't have an order, so we're going to check for npc.order.type. If it's equal to orderType.none, then we're going to call a method on our group called members hold order. Otherwise, we're going to call members cancel order. So we're going to define both of these methods. So I'm going to generate the methods and then control click on one to access it. Okay, so I'm going to remove these throw exceptions here. Let's make the methods public. So when we have a hold order, we're going to loop through the members and we're going to call hold position on order, and we'll have to give it a position. So we're going to use get position in group of the member. Let's do the same thing for members cancel order. We're going to loop through the members, and for each member, we're going to call cancel on its order. So this will work. Our NPCs will get the proper order. However, they will not execute the order, because for that to happen, we'll have to modify our behavior tree and take the orders into account. Okay, now I have a group. I'm going to click on my character and I'm going to check the order. So I'm going to press F1. Okay, now I have a hold order, and let's check the other characters in my group. So let's go to the group manager. It's usually the last group. So group 11. Let's click on one of the sentries that's following me. Let's check the order. So the order is also set to hold position. But as I said, the NPCs will not execute the orders. Right now, the orders are just a set of data that's stored in the NPC script. So let's press F1, and you can see that on the sentry that's following me, the order type has been reset to none. Okay, now let's work on order execution. Okay, so we're back in the code. Let's go to behavior trees, scripts, and then to sentry. So this is the sentry behavior tree. This is the main method that creates the behavior tree. Here we have a main FSM with an engage branch, an investigate branches, and an idle branch. So we're going to handle the move and hold order in the idle branch. So I'm going to control click on it. In the idle branch, we have a selector. So the selector will go through all of these tasks, and the first task that succeeds will be the task that will be executed. So we have the follow group task. Let's control click on it. So this task will fail if the NPC doesn't have a group or if the NPC is the leader of the group. Let's go ahead and create a new task. So let's go to NPC tasks, actions, and here I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call it orders. Let's create a new script called execute hold order. Let's put it in the game.taskSystem namespace and let's have it inherit from NPC action. Let's override the onUpdate method. If we don't have a group, or if the order type is different from hold, then we're going to fail. Then we're going to set can move to true and set the destination to npc.order.targetPosition. But we have to expose the target position, so we'll do it shortly. And we're going to return a task status of running. So let's go into order and let's expose the target position. So let's add another property, public vector tree target position, that will return the private target position. Okay, now let's go back to our Sentry script. So in the selector, we're going to add our execute hold order task as a first task in the selector. So if the task succeeds, if we have a hold order, the selector will be stuck in here and will not execute the rest. Okay, so I'm going to press F1 and now the group members have the hold position order. But as you can see in a behavior tree of one of the members, we have a typical case of a selector being stuck in a task and not evaluating the higher priority tasks. So we should implement some form of interruption here. So instead of adding the execute hold order like we did, we're going to create a sequence hold order execution, which will have our execute hold order action, and we'll add an interrupt condition has order, and we're going to give it the order type as parameter, and we're going to set interrupt lower priority to true, and finally we're going to add it to the selector. So let's implement the has order condition. Let's go to our npc tasks conditions folder. Let's add a new C# script called has order. Let's put it in the game.taskSystem namespace and let's inherit from npc condition. Let's define a constructor that takes order type as parameter and let's have a public field order type. In the constructor, we're going to set our order type to the order type in the parameter and we're going to override the onUpdate method and we're going to check if npc.order.type is equal to our order type. If so, we're going to return success, otherwise failure. Okay, let's go back to our Sentry. Okay, now let's test if it works. So I'm going to press F1 and as you can see in our Sentry behavior trees, the Sentry went back to the execute hold order sequence. So now the group members will wait and then when I press F1 again, then they will follow the group. So we have successfully implemented the hold position and follow group orders. And what's cool about the hold order is that the members will be ordered to hold the last group position. So if we have stragglers in the group, if they run in to catch up with the group, then if we give them the hold order, they will keep moving to their last position in the group. Okay, now I'm going to press F1 again to make the characters follow me. So in the behavior tree viewer, you can see that the execute hold order has failed and now they are in the follow group branch. Okay, now let's implement execution of a move order. So while we're still in the Sentry behavior tree, let's add a new sequence here. So I'm going to add a sequence. This time we're going to define a target position shared vector tree and we're going to define a new action. Let's call it get order target position. We'll put it in the task system namespace and make it inherit from npc action. Let's define a public shared vector tree target position that we're going to set in a constructor. Then let's override the onUpdate method. We're going to set the target position value to npc.order.targetPosition and we're going to return success. So what this will allow us to do is to use the goTo action. So here we created a dedicated action for executing the hold order, but it's not necessary. Let's create a new move order sequence. So we're going to add a get order target position with our target position shared variable. So we're going to have two actions here, get order target position and the goTo action. So I'm going to write this in a new line. So we're going to put this in a sequence inside of a repeater and everything will be inside of the sequence. We're going to add an interrupt condition implementation of type hasOrder, and we're going to set the order to move, and we're going to set interrupt lower priority to true. Okay, that's it. Now we can handle the move order. Now let's make the player give that order. Let's go back to the project settings. Let's add another input action. Let's call it order move, and I'm going to bind it to the F2 key. Now let's go back to our player controller. So we're going to add another method here. So it's going to be similar to onOrderHold. I'm going to copy the code in onOrderHold. So if input is press and NPC group is not null and NPC is group leader, here we're going to get the position that the player is aiming at. I'm going to use camera main screen point array. For the position, we're going to use the mouse class, which is part of the input package. So we're going to use mouse.current.position.readValue, and I'm going to store this ray in a variable. Okay, now I'm going to use physics raycast. So we're going to need a layer mask. Let's define it here. Let's call it ground layers, and we're going to initialize it to physics.default raycast layers. So if physics.raycast with our ray, and we're going to get a raycast hit, and we'll use a max distance of 1000, and we'll use our ground layers. So if we have a hit, we're going to call a members move order method on the group that we're going to define shortly. I also want to instantiate a move order effect. So we're going to have a move order effects prefab, and we're going to instantiate it at hit.point. So let's go to the top and let's define the prefab here. So let's have it as a game object. Let's have both of these properties under a header. Let's call it group orders. Okay, now we need to define this method on the group. So I'm going to generate it, and then I'm going to control click on it to access it. So let's have it as a public method. So basically what we're going to do here is pretend that this point is the position of the leader, and we're going to set the position of each follower relative to this point using the group formation. For now, for testing purposes, we're just going to move all the members to the same point. Okay, back to the editor. Let's go to our player controller, and here we're going to define the ground layers. So we're going to exclude the character controller, the ragdoll, and for our move order effect, I modified the bullet impact effect. So I made it bigger, and I changed the colors of the sparks. So it will have to do for now. Of course, we can certainly do better. So I'm going to rename it to move order effect, and I'm going to save it in our prefabs folder. Okay, now we can remove it from the scene, and I'm going to access the player controller prefab. Then I will assign the move order effect here. Okay, so I have my group here. I'm going to go into the pose mode, and I'm going to point somewhere, then press F2. So as you can see, this has created the move effect, but the characters don't seem to be moving. So we're going to debug this. Let's check the characters. So let's pick one. So let's see the order. So they have the proper move order here. Now let's check the behavior tree. So they are indeed in the idle branch, but somehow they don't have the move order sequence. Perhaps we forgot to add it. So I'm going to go back to our sentry behavior tree. So here it is. Okay, so our move order, yeah, I forgot to add the sequence to the selector. Okay, so now we have it. We still have to add one more thing, is a condition to this move order sequence. So we're going to add condition, and we're going to add the same condition as the interrupt condition. So we're going to execute the sequence under the condition that we have a move order, and we're going to interrupt lower priority tasks if we do have a move order at any point. Okay, let's try it again. So I have my group here. I'm going to go into pose mode, then press F2 and point somewhere. And the character will move there, as you can see. So they will move to the same point. Yeah, so they'll try to push each other to reach the point. Right now, with our current implementation of formation, we're not able to get a member's position from just a position. We need the leader, but we're going to change it. Let's go to our formation script. In scripts, groups and formations formations. So this is the formation, and this is the method that is implemented by the child formations. So we're going to change this. So let's add a public abstract get position, which will have the member index, the leader position, and the leader's direction. As for our previous method, we're going to remove the abstract keyword, and we're going to use our new get position in here. So we're going to get the member index with group.getFollowerIndex. We're going to get the leader position with group.getLeader position, and the leader direction with group.getLeader.direction, and we're going to call our method. Okay, so getFollowerIndex doesn't give us the index of the member, so we're going to add +1. So we have to add +1 because getFollowerIndex will return the index in the members list -1. So let's go over each formation and override the new get position instead of the old one. So I'm just going to copy the signature here. Let's go to line formation. I'm going to paste the signature. Yeah, perhaps we should do this in the base class. So let's go to formation. When trying to get the position of a member, we should check if the member is the leader and just return its position. So in the line formation, we're going to remove the leader here. So we're going to use the leader direction, and here as well, the leader direction, the leader position. Yeah, so perhaps we also need the number of followers, and here we can simply have the follower index. So let's go back to our formation. So in get position, I'm going to say follower index, and here I'm just going to use the follower index. We don't have to add one. So follower index and follower count. I think this is all we need. So all we need is these 4 informations, and we should be good to go. So when getting the position here, we're going to get the follower count. So group.get follower or member count -1. So the follower count is member count -1. So let's copy this signature again, and let's go to the line formation, and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to use our follower count here, and I'm going to use the follower index here instead of group.getFollowerIndex. And then I'm going to use the leader position here when we're calling adjust position. Okay, now let's go to the circle formation. Okay, I'm going to remove all this code, and for the angle, so we're going to use the follower index here, and here I'm going to use the follower count. Okay, so I'm going to replace the leader.direction with leader direction. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for column formation and convoy formation. Here in the column formation, we need the index of the group member. So I'm going to use follower index +1. Okay, so looking at the convoy formation, it seems that we also need the current position of the follower. So we're going to add it as second parameter. Okay, now we need to go back to the other formations and add the second parameter, even though it will not be used. Now back to the formation base class. I'm going to change this signature and add a second parameter. So in total, we have 5 parameters for this method: the follower index, the follower position, the follower count, the leader position, and the leader direction. Okay, so here we need to add a second parameter, which is going to be npc.position. So in group, we already have a follower count. I'm going to just say follower count. Okay, that should do it. Let's go back to the group script. In members move order, when looping through the list of members, if the member is the leader of the group, we're going to give it a move order with our point. If the member is a follower, we're going to get the target position using formation.getPosition, and we're going to give it the index of the member with getFollowerIndex, the position of the member, the follower count, the position of the leader, which is going to be the point, and the direction of the leader, which is going to be the current direction of the leader. Or we can do something interesting here. So we can compute the direction using point minus the leader's position, and we're going to normalize this vector. Then we can use this direction in here. So this is the direction of movement. And now we can order the follower to move to this target position. So we're going to remove this line here. Okay, so now the members will move to the target position that is computed by their formation. Okay, let's test our code. So I'm going to press F2 while pointing at a location in space, and my followers will go there, each going to a point relative to the target position, and that point will be computed using the formation of the group. Let's try pressing F1. So when I press F1, the followers will go back into formation. Let's check the code again. Let's go to player controller. Let's go to on order hold. So instead of doing this, what we can do is, if we have an order that's different from the hold order, so if order is different from order type.hold, then we're going to cancel the order. Otherwise, we're going to issue the hold order. So what this will do is, if we have a move order already, it will be canceled, and pressing the hold button again will make the characters switch between the hold position order and no order. There's just one little fix that we can do. So here I'm in the group script. So since we are removing the dead members, if all members of a group die, then here we'll have some errors. So before doing this code, we'll make sure that members count is greater than 0. Okay, so now I've created a whole bunch of NPCs. So I'm going to order them to move over there, and I'm going to stand over here, and I'm going to change my team and watch them fight the other NPCs. So now with the order system, we can move our characters around. We can give them orders. This makes controlling your group more effective. Okay, so now the player is able to issue orders to their followers, and soon we'll see how an NPC leader can do so as well. If you like this video and the content on this channel, then you can head over to the Ko-fi page of the channel. For as little as $5 a month, you can keep this channel going strong and help me produce more content and deliver much more value to you guys. So form the phalanx, defend the line, and thank you so much for your support.